Chen's cold and stern voice echoed across the vast expanse of the heavens and earth, immediately causing the hearts of countless powerful figures to tremble. Clearly, they had not expected that. When faced with the arrival of the three heavenly supreme beings, Chen not only showed no fear, but even openly provoked them. His demeanor suggested that he was not intimidated by the combined might of the three. Upon hearing Chen's words, the three figures, the purple Qi True Lord, the Dragon Eagle Emperor, and the Thunder Venerable, also darkened in expression. Since their ascension to the heavenly supreme level, they had not encountered such a direct challenge in a long time. And this was with their side clearly holding the advantage in numbers. Chen, you're truly quite bold. Do you think you can take on the three of us by yourself? Dragon Eagle Emperor said in a grim tone, his eyes filled with cold light. Chen casually replied, "Why not?" As his words fell, the black and white Chen's body surged with spiritual light, transforming once again into his spirit body. The brilliance emanating from him radiated an overwhelming aura of power, signaling that he was ready for battle. At this moment, everyone finally realized that Chen was not joking. He was genuinely prepared to challenge the three heavenly supreme beings. The three heavenly supremes looked into Chen's cold, blade-like gaze, their hearts shuddering slightly. Only then did they come to realize that with two heavenly supreme avatars, Chen's overall strength was not any weaker than theirs. If a battle were to break out today, even if they managed to win, the cost would be severe, and it was highly likely that someone among them would fall. The consequences would be far too great for them to bear. They had spent years honing their skills just to step into the heavenly supreme realm, and they had yet to fully enjoy the honor and respect that came with it. To risk it all in a life-or-death struggle with Chen seemed a poor bargain. Moreover, the three of them were not a solid unit. They had always been competitors. If it weren't for Chen's overwhelming strength, they probably wouldn't have joined forces. Therefore, the temporary alliance among them lacked absolute trust. If the battle were to begin and any one of them hesitated, the others would likely be dragged into a hopeless situation. In contrast, Chen's two avatars worked in perfect harmony, with no hint of hesitation or distrust. Their cooperation was far more seamless than the alliance of the three heavenly supremes, making it hard for them to match up. In such an unequal situation, if war broke out, their chances of victory would not be favorable. Thus, facing Chen's relentless and fearless attitude, the three heavenly supremes hesitated. For a moment, they fell silent. Their silence did not go unnoticed. The countless eyes watching the scene from all around felt a wave of shock. Who could have imagined that even with the three heavenly supremes present, they were all stunned by Chen's sharpness and unwilling to engage in battle directly? Could this not imply that even with the combined might of the three heavenly supremes, they were deeply wary of Chen? As such, gazes filled with awe began to focus on the young figure standing with his hands behind his back in the skies. With a single hand, he had subdued the three heavenly supremes, a feat so domineering it defied description. If word of this spread, Chen's name would undoubtedly echo across the entire great thousand worlds. The silence of the three heavenly supremes lasted for a while before the purple Qi True Lord finally sighed and said, "Chen, aren't you going too far?" Chen replied indifferently, "When you three incited the profound heaven elder to block the gate of my Manor, did you ever consider what was excessive?" He raised his eyelids, fixing his gaze on the three, and spoke in a tone that was cold and detached. "If I don't handle this matter today, my Manor will never know peace again. If you three want to fight, I, Chen, will accompany you. If you don't, then as I said before, leave the Northern Territory." The purple Qi True Lord frowned, and after a moment, he let out a bitter laugh. Though the Northern Territory had considerable resources, the purple Qi Spirit Cave was a superpower in itself, and this place was merely one of its properties. To risk life and death with such a powerful figure as Chen over this matter seemed unwise. Thus, he shook his head and said, "In that case, my purple Qi Cave and the Purple Cloud sect will withdraw from the Northern Territory as a gesture of apology to Chen." He knew how to pick his battles. Realizing they were at a disadvantage, he made a decisive choice to give up. With Chen's rise, the situation was already unstoppable. With him at the helm, The Mu Manor had the strength to rival the three heavenly supremes, a force even stronger than his purple chi spirit cave. Seeing the purple chi true lord step back, the Thunder Venerable also helplessly shook his head and said, "I, Thunder Sound Mountain, will also withdraw." The Dragon Eagle Emperor's eyes flashed with a hint of anger when he saw the situation. But if these two did not engage in battle, even with his power, he knew he could not contend with Mu Chen, who possessed two heavenly supreme incarnations. With a suppressed grunt, he shot a venomous glare at Mu Chen without saying a word. His figure blurred and transformed into a streak of light, soaring into the sky, stepping through the air as he left. His actions had clearly indicated his decision. On the ground, the Violet Chi True Lord, Golden Rock Emperor, and Thunder Sound Venerable watched this unfold, their faces turning grim. Their expressions were filled with bitterness as they never expected that even the powerful forces behind them would rather abandon them than face Mu Chen in battle. Without their backers, how could they hope to contend with Mu Manor? From now on, the northern domain would be a place they could no longer intervene. In the sky, Mu Chen saw the choices made by the three heavenly supremes. His eyes flickered, but he was not surprised. From the beginning, he knew that with these three scheming individuals, none of them dared to confront him directly. However, this was only possible because he had subdued the profound Heaven Elder first. Had they intervened and saved the Elder, the situation would likely have been very different. Since that's the case, I'll take my leave. Mu Chen nodded slightly toward the Violet Chi True Lord and Thunder Sound Venerable, his voice calm. Both of them, filled with frustration, could only exchange glances before turning and leaving. In this situation, staying here would only further humiliate them. As the three heavenly supremes departed, the overwhelming pressure that had hung over the area gradually faded. The many powerful individuals around, relieved, wiped the cold sweat from their brows. Mu Chen waved his sleeve, and the black and white Mu Chen dissipated, while the floating pagoda in his hand transformed into a stream of spiritual light, entering his eyes. After completing these actions, he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze lifting to the surrounding void. His profound eyes seemed to pierce through the space, as if seeing the many powerful figures who had been watching from a distance. Sensing his warning gaze, those eyes slowly began to retreat. Regret filled their expressions, as they realized that if Mu Chen had shown any weakness today, many would have rushed to divide Mu Manor. But unfortunately for them, Mu Chen was too strong, pulling Mu Manor back from the brink. And now, after today's battle, everyone knew that Mu Manor would become one of the top forces on the Tianluo continent. In the future, there might even be a real chance for Mu Manor to ascend to the throne, becoming the uncontested overlord of this superpower. Mu Chen's rise was inevitable, like a hidden dragon leaping from the abyss, unstoppable. With his momentum, Mu Manor would join the ranks of the greatest powers. In the sky, once the gazes of those spying on him faded away, Mu Chen retracted his overwhelming aura. His figure moved, descending from the sky to land before the main hall of Mu Manor. "Welcome, Manor Master." As Mu Chen landed, all the powerful members of Mu Manor, including Lu Tiandao, immediately knelt in respect, their faces filled with reverence and fervor. Mu Chen looked at them, noticing that the upper echelons of Mu Manor seemed fewer than when he had left. Sensing his gaze, Mandala stepped forward and said, "In the past 6 months, due to the pressure from the profound Heaven Elder, many forces that had previously allied with us have withdrawn from Mu Manor." Mu Chen's expression remained calm as he replied, "That's fine. Those who run at the first sign of danger are a liability. Better they leave." Mandala nodded in agreement. These people were like ungrateful wolves. If they stayed, they would become termites in the growing tree of Mu Manor, hindering its development. Although this upheaval had weakened Mu Manor's strength, it had eliminated these hidden dangers. Seize all their assets immediately and expel them from the northern domain. From now on, anyone daring to develop in this region will be eradicated. A cold glint flashed in Mu Chen's dark eyes. To ensure Mu Manor's survival, he had to enforce both rewards and punishments fairly. For those who had turned their backs, an example must be made. Upon hearing Mu Chen's chilling words, Lu Tiandao and the other leaders of various factions shuddered, relieved they had not been swayed. Otherwise, their fates would be the same as those unfortunate individuals. However, where there is punishment, there should also be reward. Mu Chen's gaze softened as he looked at the forces in the northern domain that had remained loyal until the very end. As for the confiscated assets, they will be rewarded to the loyal factions based on their contributions. Additionally, the Celestial River training tokens for the next 3 years will be doubled. As soon as these words were spoken, the leaders of many factions immediately showed expressions of wild joy and excitement. It was well known that many factions had broken away from the Moon Manor, and if they could acquire those assets, it would undoubtedly cause their power to surge. Moreover, the Celestial River training token was even more precious. If they were able to obtain it in multiples, it would mean that their carefully nurtured disciples and subordinates could go to the Celestial River for cultivation more times, thus strengthening themselves. At this moment, many of the leaders couldn't help but kneel before Mu Chen in genuine admiration, respectfully saying, "Thank you, Manor Lord, for your generous reward." Nearby, Mandala and Lingxi exchanged a smile as they witnessed Mu Chen's skillful use of both the carrot and the stick to subdue the proud leaders. They knew that the rise of Mu Manor had already been sealed the moment Mu Chen stepped into the realm of Heavenly Supreme, and from now on, no one would be able to stop it. The Northern Territory War, which had shaken the entire Tianluo continent, had finally come to an end. However, the aftershocks from this event still caused tremors throughout the continent in the months that followed. If a year ago, the war between Mu Manor and the 3 great overlords of the Northern Territory had only made Mu Manor rise to fame within the Tianluo continent, giving it some recognition, then this battle had completely established Mu Manor as one of the top powers in the entire continent, garnering the awe and respect of countless factions. From this moment onward, the Northern Territory would become Mu Manor's private domain, and no faction would dare to covet it. As for the top powers within the Tianluo continent, they would now treat Mu Manor with intense caution. Because now, Mu Manor had the Heavenly Supreme, and judging by Mu Chen's astonishing combat strength, if it weren't for the current insufficient foundation of Mu Manor, they could have already entered the ranks of the superpowers within the Great Thousand Worlds. If this were another continent, Mu Chen's current strength alone would allow him to directly dominate the entire land, treating it as his personal fief, with no one daring to speak against him. This was the rule of the Great Thousand Worlds. Once one became a Heavenly Supreme, they were considered to be at the very pinnacle of existence, akin to the rulers of the Great Thousand Worlds, holding the qualifications to be called the true ancestor, to dominate a region. However, Tianluo continent was one of the supercontinents of the Great Thousand Worlds, with resources so rich that it was unimaginable. Even superpowers would covet it. So, while there was no Heavenly Supreme currently on the continent, behind almost every top-tier faction, there were superpowers secretly supporting them. In such a complex environment, Mu Manor, under Mu Chen's leadership, was now capable of standing tall and dominating the Northern Territory, but it still could not claim supremacy over the entire Tianluo continent. If Mu Manor forcibly expanded its influence, it would inevitably provoke the intervention of many superpowers, and the dissatisfaction would likely not only come from factions like the Violet Chi Spirit Cave, Thunder Sound Monastery, and Dragon Carving Cave. If too many enemies were to arise, even Mu Chen might struggle to handle them, unless one day he possessed the strength to rival a saint-grade Heavenly Supreme. At that point, conquering the Tianluo continent would merely be a matter of flipping his hand. Therefore, under his orders, Mu Manor, after this great victory, would only consolidate its control over the Northern Territory and would not extend its reach to other areas, so as to avoid backlash from the hidden superpowers behind other factions. After all, the vast Northern Territory was already enough for Mu Manor to digest for a long time. Mu Manor, ancient heavenly palace. A beam of light descended from the sky, landing on the tallest mountain beside the Celestial River. It revealed Mu Chen's figure. He sat cross-legged at the mountain's peak, and with a slight downward glance, he could see the Celestial River winding around the majestic mountain like a jade belt. Around the Celestial River, cultivation platforms were scattered, with numerous figures practicing on them. The earlier disturbance caused by Mu Chen's arrival naturally drew many curious gazes. Those who could come to cultivate at the Celestial River were mostly the young talents from the various sects under Manor. This was because this age group benefited the most from cultivating in the Celestial River. As a result, the area around the Celestial River was filled with youths who were not only extraordinary in talent, but also striking in appearance, their ethereal presence adding much to the river's beauty. Look, it's the Manor Lord. Thus, when Chen appeared on the mountain by the Celestial River, countless young men and women who were cultivating nearby turned their respectful gazes toward him. The Mansion Lord is truly incredible. At such a young age, he has already stepped into the legendary Heavenly Supreme Realm, becoming one of the strongest in this great 1,000 worlds. Many beautiful young women, upon seeing that young and majestic figure, couldn't help but blush, their eyes sparkling like stars, speaking dreamily. Hee hee, little girls, stop daydreaming. The Mansion Lord is someone of such stature. How could he ever look at us? Some more sensible girls giggled. The young boys also snorted, saying, "It's rumored that the Mansion Lord has someone he cherishes. That celestial maiden has cultivated the Luo Shun divine body. She will undoubtedly become the most beautiful woman in the great 1,000 worlds. So, you girls can forget about it." However, the boys who spoke these words were soon met with sharp glares from the surrounding pairs of beautiful eyes. In an instant, the area around the Heavenly River was bustling. From the peak of the mountain, though a bit far from the Heavenly River, with Chen's current perception, he could naturally hear the laughter and chatter. He couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and helplessness. But as he looked at these young boys and girls, he couldn't help but feel a bit nostalgic. It reminded him of the time he spent training at the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Back then, wasn't he also in awe of the strong? He chuckled, slowly pushing those thoughts aside, and his eyes gleamed with determination. A beam of light shot out, transforming into a crystal tower that floated before him. For the past few days, he had been stationed at Manor. Once Manor had secured control over the entire northern domain, he had time to enter the ancient Heavenly Palace. Now, he needed to solve the problem contained within the Crystal Tower. A few days ago, he had battled with the profound Heaven Elder. He had only sealed him inside the floating pagoda and hadn't truly defeated him. Now that he had free time, he needed to eliminate this hidden threat. Otherwise, the next time Chen faced an enemy, the floating pagoda wouldn't be of much use. The Crystal Tower hovered silently in front of Chen, emitting a sacred light. With a flicker of his figure, he transformed into a beam of light and entered the tower. The surrounding light shifted, and he found himself within the floating pagoda. He scanned the area and saw that the crystal light within the floating pagoda was dazzling, gathering across the entire space. In the center, a crystal star had formed, and within it sat a figure, constantly channeling vast spiritual energy to resist the seal. It seemed that the figure had sensed Chen's gaze. His eyes suddenly opened wide, and his face turned a deep shade of iron. The figure was none other than the profound Heaven Elder, whom Chen had suppressed in the floating pagoda. Chen paid no attention to the elder's expression, instead observing the changes in the floating pagoda with interest. Since he had entered the Heavenly Supreme Realm, the floating pagoda had undergone drastic changes. Every beam of crystal light emanating from the tower now contained countless ancient patterns, brimming with immense sealing power. Even someone as strong as the profound Heaven Elder could do nothing but be trapped inside. Once he activated his spiritual energy, the sealing power would suppress it entirely. Has the sealing power of the floating pagoda grown strong enough to affect the Heavenly Supreme? Chen's gaze flickered. Previously, the floating pagoda didn't possess this ability, but now it did. The Futu ancient clan truly has its unique strengths. This sealing power is simply tyrannical, Chen thought to himself. Without the sealing ability of the floating pagoda, he would not have been able to deal with the profound Heaven Elder so easily. Profound Heaven Elder, are you comfortable in the floating pagoda? Chen's eyes locked onto the elder, and he smiled lightly. The elder's face turned even darker. He wanted to lash out, but he had to swallow his anger, forcing a smile and saying, "I admit defeat. It was my fault before. I'll apologize to your Manor and make reparations. Just let me out, and we'll call it even. How about it?" With no way out, the elder had to lower his head, submitting to the situation. Chen chuckled and replied, "You almost tore my Manor apart. Do you think a simple apology will make everything go away?" The elder's anger flared. "What do you want then? I never killed anyone in your Manor." A cold glint flashed in Chen's dark eyes. "If that were the case, I would have already sealed you to death." Sensing the cold, murderous intent in Chen's words, even Xiantian Elder felt a chill in his heart. He knew that Chen truly had the ability to suppress him permanently, especially with the aid of the mysterious floating pagoda. The thought of such a fate made him swallow nervously and force a flattering smile as he said, "Brother Mu, there's no need for this. We have no major grudges between us. I was just provoked by that old fool Black Light, and in a moment of madness, I came looking for trouble. What would it take for you to spare this old man? Just say the word. If it's within my power, I will certainly not refuse." Chen narrowed his eyes at the words. So it was that elder Black Light, after all. But this matter might not have been entirely his doing, for behind him stood the Xian lineage, the most powerful faction of the Fudu ancient clan. "If you want me to spare you, it's not impossible," Chen said casually, locking eyes with Xiantian Elder. Though Chen could certainly suppress him with all his might, doing so wouldn't benefit him much. Hearing Chen's words soften, Xiantian Elder's heart leaped with joy, and he hastily asked, "What conditions do you have, Brother Mu?" Chen smiled and said, "If you can promise me that starting today, you will serve as an elder in my Manor for 100 years and follow my orders during that time, then everything that happened today will be forgiven." "What?" Xiantian Elder's eyes widened, and his face turned dark. He shouted, "I, an elder of the heavenly supreme rank, have lived freely for countless years. Why would I submit to your orders?" For him, as a heavenly supreme, this was tantamount to becoming Chen's servant. Chen was unsurprised by the intense reaction. His voice remained calm as he said, "In my Manor, we will hold a grand ceremony to formally invite you as an elder and give you the respect you deserve. I won't ask much of you either. All I need is for you to stay with us for 100 years and ensure the peace of the manor." Xiantian Elder furrowed his brows, hesitation flashing in his eyes. "If you don't want to, I won't force you," Chen added, his eyes half-lidded, but a cold gleam slowly gathering in his gaze. "However, our grievances should be settled one way or another." With that, he made a hand seal, and the floating pagoda trembled. A blinding light of crystal surged down from the sky. Seeing Chen's decisive action, Xiantian Elder's heart sank. He gritted his teeth and said, 30 years. I'll serve as an elder of your Manor for 30 years. If anyone dares to challenge you during that time, I'll lend my hand in your defense." Xiantian Elder quickly realized that Chen was not someone who would hesitate. If they couldn't come to an agreement, Chen would certainly act ruthlessly. Hearing this, a gentle smile appeared on Chen's handsome face, and he nodded slightly. "Agreed." Atop the mountain, the crystal floating pagoda suddenly emitted a radiant glow. With a tremor, two light figures shot out from the tower and landed on the mountaintop, revealing Chen and Xiantian Elder. Taking in the fresh air after being trapped in the floating pagoda, Xiantian Elder couldn't help but greedily inhale, sensing the abundant spiritual energy in the atmosphere. It was clear that his time within the pagoda had not been comfortable. "Elder Xiantian, from now on, we're family. I hope you'll take good care of us," Chen said with a smile, cupping his fists in a respectful gesture. Xiantian Elder gave a dry chuckle, but inwardly, he felt deeply frustrated. What he thought would be a simple task turned into a nightmare. Not only had he failed to accomplish his mission, but he was now Chen's prisoner, forced to serve as an elder of Manor. Though it was only for 30 years, the loss of his freedom was a bitter pill to swallow for any heavenly supreme. With his status, he could have easily risen to a high position in any top-tier power in the Great Thousand Worlds, commanding enormous rewards. But now, under Chen's control, those grand offers were out of reach. Instead, he was reduced to doing menial labor for 30 years. The oath they made while trapped in the floating pagoda was binding. Though others might dismiss such vows, for a heavenly supreme, they were extremely significant. Breaking such a vow would mean betraying one's own heart, leaving deep scars on the soul, and hindering future cultivation. Thus, Mu Chen had no worries about Xiantian Elder attempting to escape, and Xiantian Elder didn't fear that Mu Chen would go back on his word after 30 years. Could Elder Xiantian help me with some doubts? Mu Chen asked gently, sitting cross-legged on the mountaintop. Elder Xiantian glanced at him and replied, "You seek the path to perfect the heavenly supreme body, don't you?" Mu Chen nodded. He had already learned how to perfect the heavenly supreme body during his earlier confrontation with Elder Xiantian. However, there were still some finer details he wished to clarify to avoid any potential mistakes in the future. Elder Xiantian also sat cross-legged, contemplating for a moment before he answered, not refusing the question. After all, such matters were hardly a great secret. Mu Chen could have learned them through other means if not from him. "I believe you already understand the basics of perfecting the heavenly supreme body," Elder Xiantian said, sweeping his sleeve. "The heavenly supreme body is a symbol of the heavenly supreme. The physical form can transform into the purest spirit body at will, granting immense combat power. Moreover, it merges with a specific domain of heaven and earth, with spiritual energy that is nearly inexhaustible. However, this is only the initial stage of the heavenly supreme body. To perfect it, you must refine the spiritual veins hidden deep within the body and fully integrate them with the heavenly supreme body. Only then will it gradually reach perfection. And a perfected heavenly supreme body doesn't just become more mystical. It also tends to manifest a special power known as the spirit vein divine ability." Spirit vein divine ability? Mu Chen's gaze sharpened. "I suppose the starry sky diagram you used earlier was a manifestation of such a divine ability?" During their previous encounter, Elder Xiantian had used this move to withstand Mu Chen's fierce attacks, despite them coming from two avatars. The defensive power had been astonishing. Elder Xiantian smiled faintly, saying, "My celestial star diagram, when it comes to defense, is unparalleled. Even most supreme divine abilities can't compare. If it weren't for you, Mu Chen, and had I faced any other opponent of the same rank, breaking through this defense wouldn't have been so easy." He looked at Mu Chen with an odd expression, as if regretting his misfortune in encountering such a prodigy. One Qi transforms 3 purities was one of the 36 supreme divine abilities of the Great Thousand Worlds. Even the Saint-grade Heavenly Supreme would be moved by its power. But somehow, this ability had fallen into Mu Chen's hands, making it clear how rare and enviable this opportunity was. Mu Chen smiled and then asked, "Is there a pattern to the manifestation of the spirit vein divine ability?" Elder Xiantian pondered before answering. "The manifestation of the spirit vein divine ability largely depends on the cultivation technique you've trained in. As for its level, that depends on the strength of the spiritual veins within your body." "Oh." Mu Chen looked at Elder Xiantian with an inquisitive expression. "You must already know, from the beginning of your cultivation, that spiritual veins are divided into 3 grades: heaven, earth, and human. However, it's rumored that beyond the heaven grade spiritual veins, there exists a rare type known as the divine grade spiritual vein. People who possess such veins are 1 in a billion. Spiritual veins may manifest in different forms, but they are always classified by their quantity, from 1 to 9. Levels 1 and 2 are for human-grade veins. Levels 3 and 4 are for earth-grade veins. 5 and 6 are for heaven-grade veins. And levels 7 to 9 correspond to divine veins. When I refined my spiritual vein, it transformed into 6 stars, which is a heaven-grade spiritual vein." Elder Xiantian sighed with admiration, his voice tinged with barely concealed envy. It's said that some spirit vein divine abilities that arise from divine grade spiritual veins possess power that rivals the top tier of the 36 supreme divine abilities. Some even claim that they could compete with those legendary abilities. Upon hearing this, Mu Chen's expression grew serious. Having the 1 Qi transforms 3 purities and 8-fold pagoda, he clearly understood just how terrifying and mystical the 36 supreme divine abilities were. With such abilities, it was nearly impossible to find an opponent of equal rank. However, Mu Chen also understood that the 36 supreme divine abilities were extremely rare. Without extraordinary luck, obtaining one was nearly impossible. Yet now, hearing Elder Xiantian speak, It seemed that the spirit vein divine ability derived from divine-grade spiritual veins could rival those 36 supreme divine abilities. This revelation left Mu Chen slightly shaken. Divine-grade spiritual veins, you say? Mu Chen murmured to himself, his dark eyes flashing with a strange light. From the time he began his cultivation, he had never been quite sure of what kind of spiritual vein he possessed, as it seemed to be deeply hidden. Even he himself couldn't sense it. However, Ji Xian had a heaven-grade spiritual vein, and yet Mu Chen hadn't felt anything particularly remarkable about it. Now that I've come this far, the spiritual vein within me should no longer be beyond my perception, Mu Chen thought, taking a deep breath. No matter how deeply hidden it is, this time, I will finally uncover its true nature. During this period, I'll trouble Elder Xiantian to protect me once. Mu Chen smiled at Elder Xiantian and said. At this moment, the affairs of Mu Manor were gradually calming down. He took this opportunity to focus on perfecting his heavenly supreme body cultivation, because soon, he would be setting out for the Futu ancient clan, where a grand battle was inevitable. Therefore, before that, he needed to solidify and master his own strength. Upon hearing Mu Chen's request, Elder Xiantian sighed helplessly. This Manor Lord was truly direct, already starting to issue orders. However, he still nodded and moved, sitting cross-legged over 100 feet away. Taking a deep breath, his expression shifted slightly, clearly sensing the dense and pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth within the ancient heavenly palace. This should be the ancient heavenly palace, truly worthy of being crafted by the heavenly emperor. Elder Xiantian nodded secretly. With his sharp eyes, he could tell that such a cultivation ground was not something ordinary superpowers in the great thousand worlds could produce. Only the top-tier superpowers possessed such depth and capability. Cultivating in such a place, even for someone like him, a heavenly supreme, would be immensely beneficial. Given this, serving as a 30-year elder in Mu Manor wasn't really a loss. Seeing this, Mu Chen smiled, then gradually closed his eyes. His spirit focused, as if his body itself were crystal clear. His blood, flesh, bones, and meridians seemed to possess a form of life, gently breathing, filling his body with vitality. Mu Chen's spirit plunged deeper into his body, searching for the spiritual veins. At this level, he could not yet detect their presence. His spirit continued to sink, as though traversing layers of time and space, sensing the spiritual veins. At first, he found nothing, but Mu Chen was undeterred, his mind calm as water, continuing his search. This process continued for an entire hour. Suddenly, Mu Chen's spirit stirred, as though breaking through a barrier. The surroundings shifted, and Mu Chen's consciousness seemed to be in a strange, unknown space. This space was chaotic, shrouded in a mysterious mist that blocked all perception. These mists. When Mu Chen's spirit detected the mist, his heart trembled slightly. He could feel that these mists were artificially created, intentionally obscuring many perceptions. Someone had tampered with his body. Initially, Mu Chen was shocked, but soon calmed down. To achieve this, the tampering must have occurred when his spiritual power had not yet emerged. Thus, it seemed his mother had employed this technique when he was born, hiding his spiritual veins within his body. And his mother's intention was clear, to obstruct the Futu ancient clan from using any means to detect his spiritual veins and trace his whereabouts. This was indeed his mother's well-intentioned effort. Mother, thank you. Mu Chen's spirit whispered, a warmth rising in his heart. However, I am no longer the infant of years past. Even if the mist disperses, no one can harm me. As if hearing Mu Chen's whisper, the mysterious mist began to shake, then started to dissipate at a visible speed. As the mist completely vanished, light began to shine in the chaos. In the depths, a gleam began to form, eventually coalescing into a crescent-shaped purple moon under Mu Chen's focused gaze. A purple moon? Mu Chen's spirit stirred. According to Elder Xiantian, if we take the numbers from 1 to 9, wouldn't this be the lowest level mortal grade spiritual vein? Just as Mu Chen was puzzled, the light around the purple moon began to condense again. Then, one after another, purple moons emerged, 3 in total. In just a few moments, there were 8 purple moons hanging high above the chaos, radiating a mysterious light. At the same time, as the 8 purple moons appeared deep within Mu Chen's body, his skin also began to glow with a soft radiance. 8 brilliant moon patterns appeared, etched into his skin. A vast power immediately spread outward. From 100 feet away, Elder Xiantian saw this, and his pupils shrank. He couldn't help but exclaim in shock, 8 moons manifestation? This boy has a divine-grade spiritual vein. 8 purple moons. Mu Chen's mind focused on the 8 radiant purple moons, and he couldn't help but smile inwardly. If that was the case, the spiritual vein hidden within him was indeed a divine bloodline. He wasn't particularly surprised by this revelation. Over the years, his displayed cultivation talents had already hinted at this, in a certain sense. Of course, possessing a divine bloodline didn't necessarily mean one could become a heavenly supreme. The cultivation journey, no matter how extraordinary the talent, was merely an aid. The most important thing was the cultivation of one's character. Without a resolute heart, one that was unafraid of suffering and death, even a divine bloodline would ultimately lead to mediocrity. Mu Chen's accomplishments over the years had all been won in the midst of life and death struggles. People only knew that he had achieved the rank of Heavenly Supreme at such a young age, but they never realized how many times he had risked his life to get there. A slight misstep could have meant his fall. Now that the divine bloodline has manifested, let it help me perfect my spirit body. Mu Chen muttered to himself, and his mind sank into quietude. After some time, a scorching heat suddenly rose within the chaos. Then, roaring flames appeared from outside, surging into the chaos and rushing toward the 8 purple moons. These flames were not formed by spiritual energy, but by Mu Chen's own heart. To refine his spiritual vein, ordinary spiritual fire wouldn't suffice. Only heart fire could achieve it. Roaring, the heart fire howled continuously, finally wrapping around the 8 purple moons, transforming them into 8 fiery moons. The sight was incredibly beautiful. As the heart fire burned, the 8 purple moons seemed to begin melting. Purple liquid dripped down from them, but just as it fell, it vanished into thin air. However, Mu Chen could feel that the purple liquid hadn't disappeared into nothingness. Instead, it had directly entered his flesh. As more and more purple liquid fused into his body, he could faintly sense that his physical body was becoming more solid, as if a missing piece was gradually being filled in and perfected. Just as I thought, Mu Chen mused, and then with a thought, his heart fire blazed hotter, accelerating the process, slowly burning the purple moons. Time passed quickly, and after several hours, the 8 purple moons hanging in the chaos had shrunk to the size of a palm. At the same time, the 8 lunar marks on Mu Chen's body grew clearer. Clearly, his body was gradually transforming into the heavenly supreme body. However, unlike the crystal-clear purity of his usual heavenly supreme body, this time, due to the presence of the purple moons, it had taken on a faint purple aura, giving it a mysterious quality. 8 purple moons. It really is a divine bloodline. I wonder what kind of divine ability this thing will evolve into. The profound heaven elder gazed enviously at the 8 purple moons on Mu Chen's spirit body. His face was full of jealousy. If Mu Chen successfully refined this divine bloodline, the spiritual abilities it would evolve into would undoubtedly be extraordinary, perhaps even at the top level of supreme divine abilities. The roaring heart fire burned. Under Mu Chen's focused gaze, the 8 purple moons were eventually consumed entirely, the final drop of purple liquid falling and merging into his body. In that instant, a strange sensation surged within Mu Chen's heart. The chaos around him trembled, and suddenly, a purple light spot appeared in the center of the chaos. The purple light spot quickly expanded, and after a few moments, it transformed into a purple flame. The purple flame swelled with the wind and immediately burst into a raging blaze. The purple fire burned fiercely, and within it, the 8 purple moons revolved, emitting mystical energy. So this is the divine ability evolved from my divine bloodline? Mu Chen muttered in wonder, his mind locked onto the purple fire. He sensed the purple fire and, after a while, was startled. He discovered that the purple fire seemed to have no destructive power against physical bodies or other materials. but it had terrifying destructive capabilities when it came into contact with spiritual energy. Once it touched spiritual energy, the purple fire would burn wildly, consuming any spiritual energy it came across until nothing remained. This meant that if someone fought Mu Chen and the purple fire attached to them, using spiritual energy to try to extinguish it would only make the fire grow more violent. This situation is somewhat similar to the spirit-transforming wind that Mu Chen encountered in the Sacred Abyss continent, except that this purple flame is clearly much more ferocious than that spirit-transforming wind. Most battles in the Great Thousand Worlds rely on spiritual energy as the foundation, so doesn't this imply that even the Heavenly Supreme, who is unaware of its origin, will be helpless and defeated when facing this purple flame? This purple flame, in terms of power, it's probably not inferior to the top-tier supreme divine abilities, Mu Chen sighed, though there was a hint of regret. Compared to the 36 supreme divine abilities that resonated across the Great Thousand Worlds, this purple flame still had some distance to go. At this thought, Mu Chen couldn't help but laugh inwardly. The 36 supreme divine abilities were renowned throughout the Great Thousand Worlds, and if he could easily create an ability that was on par with them, that would be too naive of him. Mu Chen calmed his emotions and focused his mind on the purple flame. He was about to seal it away. Since the spirit vein has been refined, I should withdraw now, he thought to himself, yet for some reason, an unusual feeling suddenly rose in his heart. Upon closer reflection, it felt like a subtle sense of incompleteness. This feeling came unexpectedly, but Mu Chen did not ignore it. At his level of cultivation, even a fleeting whim must have a reason behind it. I have clearly refined the spirit vein and gained its divine abilities. Why do I still feel this sense of incompleteness? Mu Chen pondered in his heart. After a long silence, Mu Chen kept his gaze on the burning purple flame. At one point, his heart stirred, and with a flicker of his mind, the roaring purple flame suddenly expanded. It transformed into a vast sea of fire, sweeping through the chaotic space and burning fiercely. The purple flame burned wildly, and a strange scene unfolded at that moment. As the purple flame raged, this chaotic space shattered like a mirror, with cracks rapidly spreading. Finally, with a loud crash, it shattered completely under Mu Chen's astonished gaze. Mu Chen stared in shock at the scene. He never expected such a situation to arise. As the chaos shattered, a brilliant light shot out from behind, so vast and divine, as if it had been concealed for a long time, and upon its appearance, it exuded a majestic, sacred aura. Mu Chen's shocked gaze followed the divine light, and then he gasped in astonishment. As the chaos shattered, from behind, a sacred sun slowly rose into the sky. Behind that sun, one after another appeared, and in the end, there were 9 sacred suns rising into the air. The 9 sacred suns hovered deep inside Mu Chen's body, like mighty emperors, hidden away from the world. Once they were revealed, they would surely shake the heavens and earth. Mu Chen's heart trembled as he gazed at the 9 sacred suns. In this moment, even with his composure, he couldn't help but lose control of his thoughts, exclaiming, 9 sacred suns? How could it be a divine vein again? Moreover, this divine vein was even more advanced than the 8-fold divine vein he had encountered earlier. This was the top-tier, 9-fold divine vein. What was most puzzling was that hadn't he already refined a spirit vein earlier? Why, after the 8-fold divine vein, was there still a hidden 9-fold divine vein? Mu Chen's mind was in turmoil. After a long period of contemplation, he finally calmed down. As he sensed further, he realized that the 9-fold divine vein was perfectly aligned with his physical body, as if it were meant to be. The sensation was as if it had been innate. Mu Chen's emotions surged. He realized that, compared to the perfect alignment with the 9-fold divine vein, the 8-fold divine vein, although also a good match, always felt slightly off. It was the difference between something innate and something acquired. Mu Chen fell into deep thought. After a long while, he exhaled deeply and muttered to himself, "Mother, was this you as well?" After some reflection, he began to understand. If he wasn't mistaken, the 8-fold divine vein he had previously refined probably didn't belong to him. It was likely his mother's. The purpose of that eightfold divine vein was probably to conceal the ninefold divine vein within him. Perhaps, once the ninefold divine vein manifested, and with his connection to the Futu ancient clan's bloodline, the clan would be able to sense it. Therefore, in order to protect him, his mother had even removed her own eightfold divine vein and planted it within him to hide the existence of his ninefold divine vein. Generally speaking, divine veins cannot be transferred, so it's highly likely that before Mu Chun was even born, he and Qing Yanjing were once one entity, which is why Qing Yanjing was able to plant her eightfold divine vein into his body. These thoughts swirled in Mu Chen's mind, causing a surge of mixed emotions. He felt a deep pang of bitterness and warmth in his heart. To separate a divine vein was like tearing away one's own flesh and blood, an unimaginable pain. He couldn't even fathom the suffering his mother endured when she carried him, all for the sole purpose of giving him the greatest protection. At this thought, even Mu Chen's strong heart couldn't help but feel a twinge of moisture in his eyes, the urge to shed tears overwhelming him. He took a deep breath, suppressing the turbulent emotions inside him, and muttered softly, "Mother, thank you for everything you've done for me. But now, I am no longer the helpless infant I once was. I have the strength to weather any storm. Now, if the Futu ancient clan seeks me out, let them come." Mu Chen's focus burned with intensity as he gazed at the 9 sacred suns. With a thought, his spirit surged out, and a deep voice echoed around him. "You have stayed silent with me for so many years. It's time to awaken." 9 divine veins, awaken, buzzing. As if responding to Mu Chen's call, the 9 sacred suns erupted with a humming sound, and in the next moment, billions of divine rays burst forth. At the mountaintop, the profound Heaven Elder, who had been gazing with envy at the 8 lunar runes on Mu Chen's body, suddenly witnessed the eruption of millions of lights from Mu Chen's body. He stood frozen, stupefied, as the 8 purple moons on Mu Chen's skin shrank gradually, and the 9 sacred solar runes, emanating a majestic power, materialized into the world. The entire world seemed to tremble with endless thunder, and the winds and clouds surged, as if the heavens themselves were shocked by the awakening of the 9 divine veins. The profound Heaven Elder stared blankly at the 9 sacred suns on Mu Chen's body. After a long silence, a sharp, terrified voice suddenly rang out from the mountaintop. "Son of a 9 divine veins,